Three, two, one. Hey everybody, I'm Alec Lacasse on the Alec Lacasse podcast, where we interview everyone from woodcarvers to business people discussing their tactics, practices, routines, any little tidbits that we can gather to help us in our journey through life and carving and business and all of the above. And today we have Rick Jensen. He is widely held as one of the most responsible for the popularization of cottonwood bark carving in the United States. He is author of the book Illustrated Guide to Carving Tree Bark, which was hugely successful in the carving world and influential. He's also been a featured contributor to multiple books, including Carving Found Wood, Carving a Niche in Northern Minnesota, and A Hand-Carved Christmas. In 2014, he was awarded Woodcarving Illustrated's Woodcarver of the Year, and his whimsical homes have affected the woodcarving world immensely. He is a legend. And before we get started, I wanted to read a quick quote from a mutual friend of Rick's and I's, and his name is Vic Hood. And he says in an interview with Woodcarving Illustrated that, quote, "There is no question that Rick is the most influential carver I've seen in the United States in a long time. A master carver in a 2011 Woodcarver of the Year. You can't go to a show anywhere in the United States and not see his influence." I wanted to talk a little bit about your relationship to Vic Hood, Rick. But first, I wanted to mention John Burke. And I guess before any of those things, welcome you to the show.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. So I've heard just so much about John Burke in general as an instructor. He's hugely influential in the circles that I run with, face carvers. And I was just curious what your relationship to him is.
Well, I I taught at his workshop, the Western Wildlife Art Workshop, for 28 years. I first started, I taught at night and took classes during the day. And, uh, and then finally, John says, "You just as well to start teaching for me, during the day." Well, that kind of put a kibosh to my learning stuff. That I really wanted to work with this person or that person, but it worked out in the end. I'm glad that he pushed me along and give me lots of opportunities to do stuff. And he was a big boy and just gruff and in talk and everything. He didn't care what he said, or who said the truth. But you got to love the man. He is awesome in carving the bust. That's where a lot of it started, was with John Burke.
Right.
Uh, and I've always enjoyed him. And I'll tell you a little story.
Yeah.
At John's workshop, the last day in the afternoon, we'd always have a show and tell. And we used the auditorium at this college, on stage kind of thing. And it was a wine and cheese thing, get the students drunk and they're fun. But
Right.
anyway, John, I asked John, I says, "I'm not a wine drinker, John." I said, "Do you mind if I bring a beer in?" And he says, no, that's okay. I said, "Are you sure?" And he just screamed at me, "Oh, damn it, I told you." It's okay. I just screamed back at him. I said, "Let's take it outside." You could have heard a pin drop in that auditorium. But that's the way you had to treat John. It's pretty neat. But he had a tremendous workshop from people all over the country. I can remember when Vic Hood was kind of working for John with a chainsaw, chainsawing stuff outside, and he'd hold the piece with his bare feet. You gotta remember he's from down south, but I said, wow, that he is a master with a chainsaw also. And Burke's workshop was was really awesome. And uh, another little thing, but you probably won't want to put this in. But when John was dying of cancer, the last year that he was in a scooter kind of thing, but he was getting around. And at noon, lunch in the cafeteria, he came over and he says, I want you to come on by this afternoon, he says, and talk to me. And he said, just forget about your students. Okay. So I did, and it's really kind of funny. John took his hand and put in my hand and patted me on the hand. And he says, Rick, he says, you're teaching upstairs and there's no way for me to get upstairs. And, and he says, or I would. I says, yeah, and I'm not hauling your sorry ass up there. Next thing you know, he says, get the hell out of here. John Burke is John Burke. And, I had done a, and he's joking basically. That's how he treated people. I mean,
Yeah.
And everything. And I showed him a little tool that I had carved on it, the handle of it. And he took that tool and went to every classroom and saying, this is my new line of tools. Now I'm going to show you this. Can you see it?
For those of you listening, Rick is holding up a carving tool, which is handled with a woman's torso, I believe, the lower half of a woman's torso. It's a little bit, it's lewd. It's a very lewd handle.
Yeah. But that's the way John was. I mean, he would go to bat for you in a minute, but he was just really gruff. But what a wonderful person and what a wonderful artist. His singing wasn't the best, but his guitar work was pretty
good. I've heard this is the phrase I hear people talking about in my classes. John Burke used to say something, Alec, to us, and this was often in the beginning of the class. They would say, he would say, structure, and reward yourself with detail. it's like I don't know, the accent's probably way off because this is a game of telephone. I've never met the man, and this is like three other people's interpretation of an interpretation. But
well, John was teaching a class in Grand Forks, East Grand Forks, Minnesota, and this is John Burke. Now he pulled a trailer up there, but he didn't bother to plug it in, the lights and stuff. So he gets up here in Minnesota, and he says, Rick, he says, do you think you got some stuff you can fix this with? I'll bring it tomorrow, okay? And, okay, so I did. I brought the stuff and I handed it to him. He said, well, aren't you going to do it? I said, well, I'm supposed to be taking this class and stuff. So I said, okay. So I rewired the trailer and everything, and we're carving a bust, of course, out of butternut. And we get all done, and he signs the book. He says, thanks for fixing my truck, or my trailer. And he says, but don't expect anything in return. Says, I won the demonstrating piece. He says, you can finish it, but don't sign it. That's John Burke.
What a trip. That's great. That's super fun. Yeah, what a legend, huh? Yeah, another, the gentleman who I quoted earlier, Vic, and Rick's mentioned a couple of times, is also a legend in his own right. And like you say, studied under Burke for, what was it, a number of years then, I guess, right? Or some period of time.
Didn't take his class, but because he would come up into North Dakota and up into Minnesota, so that's why I would wait for him to come up there. But I carved with with Jeff Ferris quite a bit,
Yeah.
everything. And then when I started teaching, uh, I didn't get to do that anymore.
Right.
But uh,
Hmm.
it was a one heck of a seminar that he put on. I mean,
Hmm.
the food was great, the college was great.
Hmm.
It was just awesome.
Fantastic. So I've got a personal question here. So if the audience would oblige me for a moment, there are a lot of contradicting stories about how you got started in carving. And I'm just curious, which of those stories is true? I've read stories that you started in high school in art class. I've read that you started as young as 7 years old in
Well,
carving.
that's here's what happened. I rebuilt my studio downstairs, and I had this box of stuff that my mother had saved, all the letters I'd written home from Vietnam, and all of this kind of stuff, and a baby book when I was born, and all of this. And I always said I started carving with a knife at 7 years old. Well, I was wrong. It was 5 when I got my first knife. It was a birthday gift. And the 6th birthday, I got 2.
Oh my God.
So I've been at this a long time.
I guess so.
I just made twigs out of, or twigs smaller and just
Right.
exposed and stuff like that. And my dad showed us how to use knives and how to sharpen and I can't ever remember cutting myself real bad or anything, but uh, it was a long time ago, and somebody said, "Your parents, they gave you a knife?" I said, "Yeah, because you're good parents." and stuff. But that's what really kicked off the whole thing, because I've had a knife in my pocket all my life,
Wow.
and I even used it on some soapstone and stuff.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
I found this out pretty recently that, maybe, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago, that you can use carving knives on stone.
yeah,
It dulls them, but
yeah. Uh, but you go back to what you were talking about. Um, 54 years ago, I carved my first major piece,
hmm,
and that still hangs in our home. Uh, it's hidden from view from from anybody that's over, but it hangs in our bedroom
hmm,
as a reminder of what I've come, begin with and
hmm,
what I do now.
hmm.
Uh, so I've had a joyous ride all of these years. I took some time out to chase girls and everything, and finally I, asked one to marry me, and she was dumb enough to do it. And we've been married 47 years, so
Wow.
I guess it worked out. But I couldn't do what I did running around the country teaching without
Hmm,
her. And that's been a good time. I mean,
hmm,
people are kind of disgusted. I took down my website and everything. I was working up in Canada. I was teaching up in Canada, and uh, I come I come out of Canada um, and got back into the states. It and everything, and I said to myself, I said, "Why are you doing this anymore?" I said, "This is it. I'm going to quit,"
hmm,
and I did.
hmm.
That took down the website and everything. No, I don't teach anymore.
Right.
Kind of thing. And I miss the people.
Yeah.
Uh, I still, keep in touch with quite a few of them
Hmm,
and stuff, but I don't want to travel anymore. You put that many miles on in 30 years, it's time. I
yeah.
wish I was, 10, 15 years younger that instead of going the other way.
Right.
But I will continue to carve until I can't do it anymore. And one thing uh, that stops me from doing a lot is I've had carpal tunnel done on both hands twice. That that's not a good thing, and I don't think they can do it again. I got one hand that's pretty tough that bothers me. But I can carve for about 15 minutes and then I got to stop and
Mm.
do something different. Swinging mallet isn't as bad as using edge tool or a smaller tool, but
Right.
it comes with the territory.
Yes, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
And it's, the traveling, I can attest to it, can be taxing physically. Of course, there's the emotional toll of being, a teacher, and hats off to those who are, teachers of, well, I guess grade school and beyond into high school. It's an emotional toll. You're basically putting an 8-hour performance together, and multiply that times however many days the workshop or class is. And for those who are teachers, it's daily, right? And there is a lot of it's emotionally taxing to put on a performance for 8 hours in front of a bunch of people, try to keep them entertained and occupied, being responsible for that group, and then you add insult to injury, the travel time, because often us instructors, we're traveling with tons of equipment, and it's something you can't do. You can't fly most of the time. You need to drive your equipment to those locations. So
That's correct. That, but it could be worse. Like I would go out on a run, I would schedule things, and so the longest I've ever been out at one run is 6 weeks,
wow.
and done all over from Illinois all the way down to Alabama, the East Coast,
Mm.
uh, and everything.
Mm.
In a run, and then I might be home for 2-3 weeks, and then I'd be on the West Coast or down in
Wow,
Texas.
that's fun.
But I actually was home maybe, if you figured it out, maybe 5 months out of the year.
Right.
But,
Wow,
but
it's a fair amount of traveling.
yes, a lot, and it bears on me. That it really does. And
What is some advice you would give to a young instructor of arts, maybe somebody who's aspiring to teach? What is there anything that you might say that you've learned over the years in teaching workshops, things that they could do?
yeah, it's you have a different breed of people when in a class, and some are excellent and listen, and some there's no hope.
Yeah,
I'm serious.
true.
It's really hard. Uh, I don't know. I I enjoyed it for the most part,
Yeah,
up until the end. It,
right.
I'm a people person kind of thing, and I love to tell stories and jokes and all these kind of things. And but people should, if you're going to carve, it takes a while to get somewhere with it.
Right.
I've helped people along to where they do some teaching. Uh,
Mm.
it's hard. It, wood carving is not an easy thing to teach. You've got a block of wood and a pencil and some tools, basically.
Right. Right.
And some people can grasp it and some can't. But if you're going to go out and teach, uh, it's very rewarding and it's very tiring at the same time.
Mm.
Uh, but there's not a lot of young people that are doing it. I
Hmm.
have one student here at the high school. I do demonstrations at a lot of high schools and grade schools and all
Mm.
this kind of stuff. And he stuck with it after I had been there,
Mm.
and he really enjoys it, the carving. And
Mm.
but if you're going to do it, you've got to learn a lot, uh, and don't be scared of blood. You're going to cut yourself sooner or later. It happens. Normally, it's reaching for a tool.
That's true. The worst I've ever done to myself was reaching for a still moving chainsaw attachment on a 4.5-inch angle grinder.
That, that, yeah,
That was the worst one.
I do some of that work too, and some chainsaw work. I'm not allowed to take a chainsaw out in the woods by myself anymore, or to somebody that lives here.
Your
Well,
privileges have been taken away.
yeah, yeah. And I'm not allowed on the ladder on the roof of the house anymore. I mean,
Good.
and all the time I was teaching, we were building onto the house, redoing and everything. So
Hmm.
uh, I don't know how I did it all. I look back and say, "Oh my God, that's just crazy." But I've met some of the most wonderful people that you ever meet out there on the road and teaching and stuff. But one thing about it, uh, I would carry a nightlight because if I was staying, I never, I'm staying and I wake up. Where the hell am I? You know, where it really gets on you. Where am I? You're in a strange house on this or that.
Right. Right.
Uh, and
Interesting.
but it's part of the whole gig. So
Yeah. It's true. Waking up in someone else's house when you've forgotten that you're traveling for work or in a hotel. it, it
uh,
is a strange experience. Someone's dog is there that you don't remember.
uh, it's pretty bad. I have some favorite ones that I did, and some favorites that I stayed, people I stayed with. Uh,
Hmm.
I've been in multi-million-dollar homes, and I've been in shacks basically. So
Yep.
it doesn't really matter. But as long as I'm able to carve, that's the big thing.
Hmm.
And,
So, Rick, you've done a lot to introduce the world to this particular style of carving, which is, for one, it's bark carving, but two, it's whimsical would be the word that I've heard describe it most often. But these sort of houses, and I've seen this style proliferate. Many people's work, including I was just watching a guy named Bobby Duke who on YouTube does stuff, and I'm trying to tell my dad that we're on a podcast right now. He looks like he's got a brown bag. um, the um, the video I think had 4.5 million views, and he was doing um, something that was, I mean, just a blatant version of something that you are largely credited for starting, right? So I'm sorry, I'm taking a while to build up to the question, distractions included, but who introduced, you to bark?
well, I I was carving bark long before I started the whimsical houses.
Hmm.
Because we have a lot of cottonwoods around here. I grew up as a young boy where Lewis and Clark wintered over on their expedition. Uh, the town is Washburn, North Dakota, but uh, where they stopped was called Fort Mandan and everything. And some of those trees were there, huge because they made canoes out of it.
Hmm.
That Indians, I learned how to do that too, and
Hmm.
stuff. But that is how I found the cottonwood bark because we would be fishing down on the Missouri River with Dad and everything, and we'd always have a fire going in the late evening or early evening till the late evening. My dad fished for sturgeon all the time,
Hmm.
and us kids, that bark pieces were just right to carry. you know,
Hmm.
about 18, 20 inches long to make
Right.
and stuff. And so we burnt a lot of good carving wood.
Oh.
But we monkeyed with it and stuff. And it was nice to have the warmth and stuff. And uh, the big trees down along the Missouri had cousins down there that I'm talking, you can't reach your arms around them. They got about a 30-foot circumference. And when they die, we would run on the tops of them, because it was muddy on the river and stuff. But them big trees were there, that cottonwood, and I wish I could go back and save all of that. But people don't understand what it's like to gather cottonwood bark, the bugs and all of that. And there are ways to kill a tree. It takes about 3 years for it to dry up enough to loosen the bark, and then it takes another year or so for the bark to dry.
Right.
But have I killed a few trees? Yeah, that were nuisance trees
Right.
and stuff. And like I say, I grew up along the Missouri, and there's still big cottonwoods out there.
Right.
The Lewis and Clark cottonwoods, they're called, and there's I don't know, about 60 acres or so, maybe even a little bit more, just dedicated to the Lewis and Clark cottonwoods that can't be touched.
Right.
But and so I was carving wood spirits, okay, and I was teaching at a college in Wapaton, North Dakota, and there was a guy from Montana there that had some bark, and he did some bark carving. That he had a place in Tacoma and one in Montana. I can't think of the name of the town right at the moment, but that and he had a little house kind of thing, and it didn't look too bad. And so I talked to him about it, and Art Oliver was his name, and it stuck in my head, you know. Hey, I could do this, you know. I would do this and this a little bit different, but I had some pretty crude houses to begin with, but that's how you learn, you know. You got to be aggressive and daring to try something. A failure, yeah, big deal. You know, you burn it, so nobody sees it. I mean, but it's just a wonderful material. Some pieces of bark, cottonwood bark, you could pound steaks with them and not even hurt them. And I don't know why, but and there's a lot of misconceptions about bark. Well, you got to be up in the cold country, you know. That bark has nothing to do with keeping the tree warm. It's a different species. You know, and people just, you know, they don't understand.
This is true.
And there's about 7 different species in North America, so and not all of them are carvable. Okay.
So then it was, this gentleman's name was Art, you said?
Yeah, Art Oliver.
Art Oliver.
Yeah, and now I remember the town, Trout Creek, Montana.
Trout Creek.
Yeah, it's would be way up north of Missoula. And he had bark stored everywhere. And he's pretty dangerous. When you go find a tree that's shedding bark, it's a long pole to stick up underneath it and pop them.
Right.
I don't know. I wonder someday if that's what's going to kill me. It's dangerous, to say the least.
Sure, for sure.
Yeah. But I still hunt bark. I haven't yet this spring, but I've got a couple of trees that I'm working on. So I've got more bark than I can probably ever carve in my whole lifetime.
Oh, you know, it's funny that you mentioned that you still hunt for bark, because I think possibly cottonwood bark hunting is one of my favorite parts of the carving process. Do you feel that way? That's the part of the hunt, and finding a really good tree with massive bark on it is just, there's a feeling. It is so exciting.
Yeah, you got that right. I would have my big trailer along, and you could haul a car on it and a pickup, and they would all be full when I came back.
Oh my goodness.
But you got to be careful of bears if you're up in the mountains. In Montana. Not so big about the black bears, but the grizzlies. There's always something to be feared of. but not all bark is carvable. Like
Hmm.
and some of it is, just hard. Um, it's power carves,
Yeah.
and I do some power carving. And somebody said, "Well, how come you power carve?" I said, "Because some things is much easier for me to do." Yeah.
Right.
Uh, like I say, I've beat up my hands so bad over the years that I've abused them, and I know I suffer for it. But I still carve it.
Yeah.
Uh, I don't know. That's how I got into that. So I started this house thing. Okay, uh,
Hmm.
when I seen this, and I fooled around with it and fooled around with it, and then I said, I wonder if I can figure out a way to put a couple pieces together and everything. And that's when I started doing the end around pieces. And there's a lot to that. I've seen some poorly done ones, and I've seen some magnificent pieces.
Hmm.
Uh, yeah. One thing when when I did all the traveling and teaching, I did a lot of judging at some of the shows,
Mm.
and that was fun to do, and
So fun.
some pretty nice bark pieces out there at the biggest show in Dayton,
Mm.
Ohio. It's done now. That was an awesome place to go. How awesome! I was the head judge there one time, and so they had me do a demonstration, and they're filming this in this big auditorium area. And the guy filming it, they stopped me. I said, well, what's the matter? He said, we got to get more chairs. They had 100 chairs to begin with. They brought in 50 more. And now I'm not joking about this. And there were still people standing.
Mm.
Get all done. The guy that filmed it, he says, we've never, ever had that many people in a demonstration. I said, that's because I haven't been here before. Okay,
There you go.
well,
Drop the mic.
you get back into uh, the Dayton show.
Mm.
Woodcarving Illustrated would always be there with a booth, and they did what was called a spit and whittle.
Mm.
We didn't get to spit, but whittled. And they had about 4 or 5 tables, and they would announce somebody's carving and stuff. And then when they announced Rick Jensen's going to be carving, it's just like a herd of sheep just flocked right in. I mean, they actually ended up moving their booth to the back of the auditorium,
Mm.
the big hall there, and stuff because they would block traffic. There were so many people, and so okay, Rick's teaching, and then the people. I mean, there's 100 people standing around, and so I would do something. I'd pass a piece around to, to so everybody to handle it,
Right.
and we'll get. And I said that piece is going to go up for sale
Hmm.
when everybody gets to look at it. And I says the first one with the money on the table, when I say the fee, it's theirs. And you could watch the people move up that were really interested. Now that was that was one way, and I would sell the piece, but that many people is unreal.
Hmm.
Um, and for one little guy to handle that many people, I mean, it made me feel good, but geez, I wish I could help them more.
It seems the case that carvers are often bad at seizing business opportunities, and I am one who shares in some of those regrets, having done demonstrations, art shows, etc. And selling out it's both a good feeling and a and a bad one, especially if you have low inventory, which in that case, if you only have one piece.
I don't know. And a lot of the big boys were there, Zabadell and
Mm-hmm.
and stuff, and he's a hoot, but his wife is something else.
Oh, oh my gosh, Hannah, or yeah,
It and I always well, Woodcarving Illustrated, Fox Chapel.
yeah.
They would say, "Look, we're busy the first night they're setting up and everything,"
Mhm.
and I was always told, "Well, go get about 10, 12 people, and we'll have a party tonight.
Mhm.
We'll go out for a good dinner and everything." Well,
Mhm.
I said, well, what? Just whoever you want. You know, okay. So but the big boys came along. But it's interesting how people will they want to see it, they want to buy it. And another thing that I used to do at shows uh, is when a couple came by, I always glanced at what kind of jewelry they had on again to determine what my price was going to be. Is that a little bit nasty? Yeah, I suppose, but they got it. They can afford it.
All right.
So,
Right. Yeah, I guess most companies do it, right? You go to a Whole Foods in, I don't know, a ritzy part of town, it's going to be more expensive generally than a Whole Foods in a lower, if you go to the Whole Foods in Detroit, the food bar is $1 less than if you go to the one in the Million Dollar Mile over here in Rochester, Michigan. So pricing appropriately based on the clients. Yeah. Well, I guess that reminds me of a lesson I learned, which is the mistake that many carvers make is they price their work based on the way they see value in things. And what they don't realize is that people, the desired customer is one who sees money differently than they do. And preferably they have more of it. So
yeah.
the scale is different. So you shouldn't price for your financial demographic, if you will. You want to price for the dream client, right?
Yeah, I did a Santa Claus for a lady that I had done one for my wife and kids, and a 16-inch one standing. And this gal seen this piece, and she said, would you carve me one?"
Mm.
And I said, "Yeah." I said, "But not under $1,000." And okay. I've got another piece. She says, "You don't understand. I want it." And I said, "No, you're not getting it." Kind of thing. But uh, don't get yourself down into a nickel dimes kind of stuff. Your
Yeah.
work is actually worth more than that.
Yeah.
You're going to get somebody that wants to get it cheaper and everything. And I'm fortunate enough now, I don't have to work.
Right.
And there's no shows out there right now.
Right.
Uh, and I've never sold on the internet or anything. I get a few commissions here and there if I want them. I carve other things besides bark, and I can prove it if you can see back
Yeah.
there.
Right.
There's,
There's a shelf in the background with a variety of different, looks like hardwoods,
yeah,
carved into figures and faces, wildlife, all
faces
kinds of stuff.
faces are tough. I haven't done many bust work for a long time. I've got
Yeah.
one sitting in down here that I've got to repair when I
Mhm.
made a mistake on it,
Mhm.
and uh, it's butternut green.
Mhm.
It's got one little crack in it, but I screwed up in one spot, and it's going to get fixed. I've got one carving that I started 20 some years ago.
Mhm.
Okay, with a gentleman, and had it half done, maybe a little less. And last winter, I said I had done part of the studio over, and I said, I'm going to pick that piece up and I'm going to finish it, and I did.
Mhm.
And now I got another one that I'm going to finish. I had two or three of them actually that I got done
That's awesome.
this past winter. But that's my job to carve, and I love to cook too. That because you can have a cocktail when you're cooking. That's
Right.
perfect.
That's fun.
Yeah.
What are your what are your favorite dishes to cook?
Pardon?
What are your favorite dishes to cook? What do you like? What kind of things do you like to cook?
Well, I've got one that I made up a recipe that goes with. I like to fish,
Right.
and I like walleye and stuff, and
Mm.
I call it wild rice extraordinaire. It's got uh, cranberry raisins pieces in it.
Ooh.
It's got some onions, some garlic, and then it's wild rice, and then I bind it with hollandaise sauce
Mm.
and stuff. And my wife says it's to die for, and I said, it hasn't happened yet. So uh, I like to cook. And actually, when I was 13 years old, uh, we moved to Minnesota. When I was about 8, somebody told my dad to go to hell, so we came to Minnesota. Well, it's interesting to say the least. So I'm, I came here about 8 years old, something like that, and everything. But when I was 13, I went to work in a bakery. I mean, I'm going to school and everything, but uh, we didn't have a whole lot of money and stuff. So the guy had this posting for a job. The third time that I went there and asked about it, he hired me. And so I worked for him for 4 years until I graduated at 17.
Hmm.
And I tried to enlist in the Navy at 17. They used to have a kiddie cruise, but they had done away with that. So Vietnam was the big thing, and I figured, well, if I join the Navy, I'll be on a ship. I'll be, they haven't sunk in any ships yet. Well, guess what? I never went. I was aboard a ship. I went to Vietnam uh, as a baker and a cook, uh,
Wow.
and because I was going to decorate cakes. I started decorating cakes at 15 at the bakery, with a candy decorating kind of thing, and didn't have the money to go to school right after I graduated, so I kept working.
Mm.
When I got to Vietnam, uh, I wasn't on a ship. They put me in Da Nang for 6 months, and then they shipped me to an island. Uh, and it was kind of like an old show, McHale's Navy and Gilligan's Island, without the pretty women, though. But but we're real bullets. And I spent a year on that island. So I put in 18 months over in Vietnam.
Wow.
And stuff, and cooked and everything. And I got out, and I had a fellow that wanted to get out of the baking business, and I didn't want to do it anymore. It's all early morning stuff, and I'd had enough, uh, and I survived. Yeah. But that 13, working at 13 years old was really something.
Hmm.
That and that now you couldn't do that. But,
No, not legally.
so I've had a job for a long time. Now I don't have a job.
What do you do? What did you do then before carving? Did you have a career prior to it?
Pardon, run that by me again.
Yeah. Do you have a career? So in between the Vietnam War and traveling, teaching carving, what was your vocation?
I uh, I guess you could call. I was in management for Sunflower Outfit, the largest in the world, and everything. And I hated it, absolutely hated it, dealing with people. They wouldn't show up. I'm sick today. I says, I could go right down here, and every day your wife has got a holiday, you're sick. so so I went back to some stuff that I had done in high school in metal shop. I was a welder for most of my career, millwright welder, fabricator for this one company. And they would tell me, We need something machine that'll do this and this and this, and okay, and I would build it and stuff, and dirty hot work, but hey, it paid. So so I was a millwright welder kind of thing, and no, I didn't go on any of the pipelines. Yeah, that that happens. I worked iron one summer and early fall, and was an iron worker and a permit hand. And I decided this is not for me because them guys are drunk all the time, every night, and they're hungover in the morning. And my life depends on your partner. You know, you're 200-300 feet in the air, and you don't have but one slip. Whoops. You know, but things have changed too. You know, where they don't do that quite the same. You've got to be tied off and everything. But so I welded, and no, I didn't do any metal sculpture. I did one, but there is a guy that does some metal sculpture. That's a hell of an artist, and that's Bob Dylan. Yeah.
Really?
Yes. Yeah. Bobby Zimmerman lived up the road a piece up in the Iron Range. Was where
Really?
Yeah, you get on your computer one day and look that he likes gates. You know, you can either be locked in or locked out. Kind of. But he has.
I'll be dead.
Yeah, he's a fabricator, metal man and stuff. Yeah, most people don't know.
I'll be dipped. I had no idea. I wonder if he still lives in Minnesota.
Well, no, he's been in New York ever since, you know, he graduated from high school, basically. But
Sure.
that I've been by his place, you know, where he was born or lived and stuff. But
Really?
yeah, up in the Iron Range, that's well, Michigan's got iron ranges too. You know, if you ever get desperate, you can take a big ride along and you know, they process iron and got some iron ore.
Right.
That I don't know. I've taught in Michigan a few times for Floyd Radigan.
Floyd's another great character in carving.
Well, we might have consumed a beer before together.
Have you? That's kind of surprising, actually, that you would have had, you know, a beer as part of that. Sarcasm implied.
Well, Floyd and I used to be down in Tennessee at the same time, and he was teaching at Smoky Mountain, and I was teaching at a different place. But we would get together and have a good time.
That's fun.
And stuff. I don't see much of them. Well, none of them. The last 2 years have been tough.
Yeah.
You know, and some of the people are gone. You know, some of the old guys that I knew, and it's sad. But I stay in touch with quite a few people.
Good.
But I've always had something to do, and it's always been with my hands, creative.
Right.
And my brain just doesn't work the same as normal people. And the bark houses and stuff. I've done some fabulous pieces, and I've done some junk that I would drive over or something, burn. That's the way you learn.
Yeah.
You've got to make some mistakes and figure out how to fix them.
Right.
And I certainly love it. And I haven't carved anything since this morning. Early. I say early. I'm probably up right by 4 or 5 o'clock.
Oh wow! Which leads me.
And then carve for a while and stuff, and then be breakfast time. Then I go back to carving for a while or do something else.
Yeah, that leads me to the question of daily routine. It's something we often are interested in, or I'm often interested in. Personally, I shouldn't speak for anyone else. What is it that you do? So you wake up 4 a.m. 4 or 5.
Well, I've never been able to sleep well, and that stems partly from Vietnam and partly, you know, body-wise and stuff. But If I get 4 to 5 hours, that's pretty good. Once in a while, I'll get 7 or 8, but it's pretty
Mm.
rare.
Mm.
And I can't sleep any longer. And you'll edit this out, but I have an enlarged prostate, and of course you can't have much fluid in your bladder. It's just so I'm up, but I can never go back to sleep.
Mm.
So I've learned to live with it. When I was on the road, a lot of times I just pull into a rest area, set a timer for 20 minutes and stuff, and just a 20-minute rest. And sometimes I would set it a couple times, but it just had to be on the road going
Right.
to get from point A to point B.
Hard to have a morning routine if you're traveling a lot for work.
Pardon?
I said it's hard to have a morning routine if you're traveling so much.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's part of it. That's caused this. And so I have some sleep problems, but I'm still alive.
There you go.
One thing that I got to do that a lot of people never will get to do is I've been aboard a fancy yacht that I said, well, this is awful nice yacht. He said, no, this is just a little one. It's only 5 mil. But that's pretty impressive, on the intercoastal waterways of the Carolinas. And the food, you go places where tourists never get to go, but I've done a lot of fun things out there. I've done a lot of stupid ones too.
Who would have thought a woodcarver would be allowed on a yacht?
Well, in up in Jersey or Connecticut, Mystic, Connecticut, that's quite a town. That's where that's really neat. The old ships and there was some big boats tied up. We were took a steamboat around all the harbor and everything, and there was a big yacht that pulled in, and it had a helo pad and a great big boat on it and everything. And I says, wow. I said, it must cost a couple bucks to tie that up at night. They said, no, about $700 a night. And he says, but they put on $35,000 worth of fuel coming from the UK. And
oh my gosh, I literally just got a headache from thinking about putting that much into fuel.
Yeah, but
it's crazy.
See some of the old ships figureheads that have been carved and stuff, and some of the John Bellamy, the Bellamy Eagles. I got everything put together to do one, but I haven't done it yet. But them big figureheads or something, that Bellamy did.
Who are some carvers that influence? I know there's Burke. I read something about Harold Enlow. Was he an influence on you?
Oh boy, I and Harold go back a long ways. Harold is dynamite. I mean, he is one wonderful person, just as easygoing as can be. And we were in War Eagle, Arkansas, and his wife Elaine was along and stuff, and it was really interesting. And we both had been in the military, and we didn't like standing in line, so we weren't going to stand in line at the picnic. We'll wait till everybody gets served, and then we'll have, And Elaine says, there probably won't be anything left. I said, well, look at me, I don't need any more and stuff. But Harold is a jokester. I mean, when the first time I went to War Eagle, where I was staying, there was a little cabin. I could go in the door, I could reach that wall, and I could reach this wall. Just both walls, and it had one light bulb, and it was cheap. It was like $25 a night.
Right.
and Harold found the place for us.
Nice, nice.
We've been together many times, and one time Harold said, he said, you know, Rick, he says, if you, I'll promote you if you want me to. And I says, well, whatever you want to do will help and everything. So he did. He would give me some gigs at some of the biggest ones in the States, like Silver Dollar City. There'd be 400 and some carvers there. And all of these places. And Harold uh, is a character. I mean, he's really different kind of a person. And excuse me for 1 second.
Yeah.
When Harold retired from wood carving, I sent. He always told me he could fall out of his backyard. So I carved a little house so that he could fall out of the front and everything. And what does he do? He sends me a new knife he made. It's barbed wire, but they call it bob wire. And he said, Rick, he says, the blue in there, those blue specks, he says, that's just for you. And it's not very comfortable to carve with, but he did, you know, he does blacksmithing. That's his hobby.
Oh, wow.
And he's the Inferior Tool Company. That's what he does. And he just turned 80, I think, here this past summer or somewhere. But I've known Harold for a coon's age. And he used to write all of these wild stories, and he'd send them to me and stuff. What a wonderful person. Now so he's an awesome guy. And his work, you know, you can see his influence on the caricature carvers.
Yeah, and, for sure. No doubt you can.
Yeah, so but neat fellow.
Any other influences in the carving world when you're starting out? Were there any folks?
Well, there was a couple. Joe Wanamaker, long since gone. He was a character carver. He was a pattern maker in I can't remember, Illinois, I think, and he had an influence on me. I loved what he did and stuff, and we would talk quite a bit. And I've got a piece of his somewhere packed away, I believe it is. But neat guy. There's just all kinds of them. You know, I don't know a lot of the CCA boys anymore. There's been a lot of change, but at one time,
sure,
out in Idaho, in Boise, they wanted me to come out and teach at this thing, and it was all caricature carvers except for me that were teaching, and it was awesome. It really was, and I did that for a couple, 3 years, and this I don't want to go anywhere, but they, some of the boys, the Western boys, approached me about becoming a member of the CCA, and I was floored about it and stuff. And so I said, well, I don't know. I says, I'll think about it. So I mentioned it to my wife on the way home and stuff. And my buddy that helped write the book, Jack Williams, CCA member, he said, well, he says, let's put all this together and we'll see what happens. And I said, well, I says, some of them aren't going to like what I do, and some of them are. I says, and I says, I don't want to be beat down for what I do. You know, I says, that's fine. If they don't want to do that, I'm okay with that. I don't want to get in there because I'm Rick Jensen.
Right.
Know? And I says, if it comes to a vote, just let it be. If it doesn't happen, I don't care. I mean, right. I'm fine. And I'm glad that I never did. That's a tough one.
Mm.
You've got to go to their annual meetings and all of this.
Hmm.
Uh, but there's some great guys in there.
Hmm.
You know, some that are retired now, and Mark
For
Price
sure.
that, and
For
uh,
sure. Yeah. Yep. I reached out to him recently, and I guess his girlfriend is the one who she does the communicating for him, apparently. So she responded to my email kindly.
uh,
So this is
I've been.
this is normally the part in the podcast or the dedicated time for rapid fire questions. These are a few sort of, some of them are lighthearted. Some of them are a little bit deeper, and actually one of them we've already covered, but you can feel free to answer it any way you'd like. But the first is, what is an uncommon belief that you have that not many have, if any?
Oh boy, yeah, run that by me one more time. I
Yeah,
don't have
yeah.
securities in, so
Oh, you're fine. What is an uncommon belief that you have that not many do?
that well, that'd be pretty tough. It uh, I really can't give you an answer on
That's fine. Yeah, totally fine. The next is, what do you like to do in your free time?
that. What free time? I like to cook.
Uh,
I like to carve.
mm,
Uh, I like to garden. Uh,
mm,
all of these things that I couldn't do when I was on the road.
right.
Uh, and I like to spend time with my little granddaughter. Um, you know, she's a hoot. So
Hmm.
uh, she's going to be 5 years old, and I can't give her a knife. So next question:
What's your favorite pizza topping?
pepperoni and sausage.
There we go. Okay, a little classic. Look, we've got a classic boy here. We always got
But
the
then
unique ones.
I make my own pizza from scratch.
Really?
Yeah, yeah, everything, the sauce, the crust.
Wow.
It, got to remember, I like to cook.
That's right. You're not kidding.
And yeah, and when I get done with a pan of pizza, it must be 6, 7 pounds.
Oh my gosh. How big is this thing?
Sheet pan.
That's a big one. It's a big pizza. Okay, and this is usually our final question, and it's the time you've laughed the hardest, or a time you've laughed very, very hard. You can think of one.
That I've laughed. Um, oh boy, that's a while. Uh, I kind of laughed at a guy that uh, screwed up on a parade, and they had a water tank on this trailer, and he was going to dive into it, but he missed. He didn't hit it just right. He got wet. There's no doubt about that, but not the way he was supposed to.
Oh.
I mean, it probably wasn't a laughing thing, but he didn't get hurt.
Oh, that's good.
But it didn't help.
so long so long as it didn't get hurt. Are there any other things that we didn't question or didn't cover today that might be something you want to talk about?
Well, uh, I'm trying to think here. If you're gonna be a carver or a sculptor or an
Yeah.
artist, a
Yeah.
woodwork artist,
Yeah.
whatever, uh, you need to learn how to sharpen tools.
Yes.
That's the biggest downfall I have. And somebody will say, "Well, can you sharpen tools for me?" I said, "Not in class time, I can't." Some places they will have somebody that you can get your tools sharpened. Some of the bigger area places or seminars and stuff. But
Mhm.
you take like Silver Dollar City when they were still in it. there would be lineup of people dropping tools off to get sharpened.
Hmm.
You know, I learned to sharpen when I was young. That oh, I've got some tools that and somebody said, "Well, why are your corners of your tools turned up like that?" And I said,
Yeah.
"It doesn't dig into the bark. I can carve on,
Yes.
on the edge." Some of them are a little bit radical, but some aren't. And uh, I've even made some tools, blacksmithing and stuff.
Hmm.
But that's the biggest thing is you've got to learn how to sharpen.
Hmm.
There's many ways and simple ways to sharpen a knife. Scary sharp,
Right.
uh, you know, and stuff. But that's always something that everybody has trouble with.
Hmm.
That do I curse at it once in a while? Yeah.
Yeah, no doubt.
That's you know, uh, but like I said, the one person he said, "Well, can you sharpen this for me?" I said, "Yeah." And this I used to do in class, and pretty soon he'd be up there with another one, and pretty soon another one, and I sharpened it. And then he says, "Well, I didn't get done with my piece." I said, "What do you want? You know, you're up here, constant."
Right.
You know, and that's a bad thing, and some people think they deserve more time than others.
Right.
And I always tell them, I said, "Well, look at here." I said, "You were a beginner at one time, weren't you?" "Yeah." I said, "Well, this is a beginner too, and he needs a little more help than what you
Hmm.
do. So I might spend a little bit more time. I might not take a coffee break. I might skip
Right.
or something, but that's the biggest thing is sharp tools.
Hmm.
That
Hmm.
you try carving with a dull tool, you pretty soon I can't do this."
Right.
Okay. And do I have a lot of tools? Uh, yeah, I counted them before we did this thing the other day. Uh, I guess I have knives and gouges. I have about 300. But I don't know. You must have close to that.
No, that's a lot. I haven't counted. I try not to. I try to avoid those thoughts, but
Yeah.
I have a lot of tools.
Well, then I got air compressor ones too,
Yeah.
chisels, some
Right.
big boys
Yeah.
that for John Burke stuff. you know, uh, I made adapters just like what he had and everything, and from 50, 60 millimeter tools for roughing out,
Hmm.
uh, working from a log. That remember, I can't handle chainsaw anymore in the woods. I got a lot of butternut. You should come by one day.
Oh
That
my gosh.
I got to move them. Uh, they're all in the round.
Wow.
They're all dried and they were
Wow.
to begin with, and some of them are pretty good size.
Wow.
That I don't know. I've been thinking about going to Michigan.
Yes.
Uh, uh,
Come.
I
You
don't
should.
know why, but if you come for to do another class up here in Bemidji or whatever, I'll drag you some wood over.
Oh my gosh.
Uh,
That's so kind of you. I will hopefully be there again in the near future as things start to calm down. But
well,
if you ever do come to Michigan, I will message you my address after our conversation today, and you are always welcome. The door is always open to you.
well, Floyd's going to have Floyd Fest again.
Hmm.
I did see that, and I wanted to go to the Congress this year, but that's not going to happen. Uh,
Yep. Canceled.
I
Yeah.
used to teach there quite a bit too.
Did you?
Yeah, and that's where I met Bob or Josh Kruge, Bob's son, and I knew Bob too, and
Okay.
judged with him one time
Hmm.
and stuff. Uh, but so I don't know. My wife says, "Well, you should go carve with some of your friends," So I said, "Well, I got friends in Hawaii."
I need friends in Hawaii.
I'm not going back to Vietnam.
Rick, this has been such a fun conversation. You are a legend in the carving world. And from the moment I saw your work and heard your name as a, I don't know, maybe 12-year-old kid, I was inspired to try found wood carving, to try cottonwood bark carving. And I just appreciate all that you've done. And you've really helped to shape my career in a large sense too, in that you popularized the one of my favorite materials to use for carving. And so thank you for doing that.
Yeah, well, you're welcome. Now, you are awesome.
Thank you.
You're going to kill yourself in these 10-minute things.
I gotta stop. I'm gonna stab myself in the jugular.
Well, well, I don't know. There's a satisfaction in doing it that quick, but there's probably not as neat as it could be.
Oh, no way. They're not neat at all. Notice why I never zoom in at the end of the live stream.
When you were down to Tennessee, what kind of wood were you using?
When I was down in Tennessee, well, when I was visiting Vic, probably the last time I was in Tennessee for carving, if that's what you're referring to, I mostly observed. I was down just watching Vic carve in basswood. I did very little carving. I was actually down to film an instructional series for my wood carving school. So, which that'll be out soon. But yeah, I didn't do all that much carving down there. Never have.
Well, I was just wondering because I've got some red cedar, Eastern red.
Oh, red cedar is great to carve.
Yeah,
it smells great too.
Stuff. I mean, I got a little bit of everything.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful.
Believe me, I would drag wood home. I've got more redwood than probably anybody in the state.
Really?
A redwood coffee table, one that I need to sandblast, and I think I was always going to carve faces in the base. That, but I never did. But and I haven't carved much redwood, but I have some long pieces,
right,
that slabs. That, but wood is Minnesota's full of it. Right. But we've got good basswood. If it's John Krantz is my buddy, where I get the good basswood and stuff. But
right. And basswood, for those of you who don't know about it, it is an excellent wood to carve with. It's very relatively soft for its density and low grain presence, meaning it does not fight you as you move the tool through it. It tends to hold up pretty well in multiple directions. It doesn't tear out as easily as some materials do. So that is a huge advantage for carvers. Mostly we're looking for types of wood that hold detail well, that are fairly soft, easy to work, and basswood's definitely one of them.
Well, it doesn't power carve very well.
It doesn't not. Yeah.
Fudges up and stuff.
Oh, it's very fuzzy. Yeah.
For sure. I did a piece of a bark with a tree on it for that outfit in Michigan that makes all of the burrs and stuff.
Cuts all?
Yeah, they do. Well, they do that, but they have their own thing. It's all. No, I can't think of the name of the place now. Friction coating or something like that. Anyway, the gal that I did a piece for, and sent him, and we did a video on it, I think, if I remember right. But and she said, I'm going to send you our catalogs online, she says, and be fair to yourself, be generous, whatever you want.
There you go.
So, okay, so I got $1,000 worth of. I mean, I've had this, be fair to yourself.
There you go.
And friction coating, I think, is what it is.
Huh.
Well, they make typhoon too. For when I did a symposium up in Canada,
Uh,
in Kitchener, Ontario, for chipping away.
hmm.
I did a class. I did lectures. I did a hands-on in the evening, uh, and a class and stuff, um, from people all over. There was people all over Canada, the States, the UK. It was pretty neat to be, and a bunch of us were sitting around, and this guy from the UK, it was a big, huge round table. We're having some drinks and and stuff, and the guy from the UK, he looks around and he says, "It doesn't get any better than this." He says, "Some of the world's top carvers are sitting right here."
Hmm.
You know, it was pretty neat. And I did it for 2 years, I think. Uh, but I used to carve for chipping away up there quite a bit.
Yeah.
And now it's been sold. Dennis is still there, but uh, it's pretty neat place. I used to get a lot of tools from him. Sharpening systems. He gave me his sharpening systems, both of them.
Hmm.
That said, "Here you go."
Nice.
He'd use them once in a while in a seminar. Used to, and it's surprising the people that I influenced to buy them.
Hmm.
And, so
Shout out to shout out to Chipping Away. They're great people. Cindy, I believe, she's a sweet lady, such a fun lady from my interactions with her. Thank you so much, Rick. Appreciate you.
You bet. Let me know if you're going to do up in Bemidji, and I'll go.
There you go. See you then.
That was so good.